realize why it's important to stay. And that's what this conversation is going to be about. So let me get started. Oh, give me 1 minute. Is everyone able to see my screen? I may not be able to see you. So if you're able to see my screen, just do a thumbs up or something, and maybe Catherine will see you, because I cannot see everybody when I'm presenting. Yeah? All right. So we're going to talk about engaging parents in the elementary conversation. So we know that Montessori 3 to 6 program, the primary program, is very popular nowadays, and it always has been. Even now, if you go ask an average person on the street, hey, do you know what Montessori schools are? They'll say, oh, it's for little children. But not everybody is even understands that there is Montessori beyond the primary and beyond 3 to 6. And so it's always important that we talk to parents about it and we make sure that they understand what is it that's happening in the elementary, why it's important to stay for that elementary year, because that elementary really builds upon that 3 to 6 program. So first thing, it begins with welcoming parents into that whole idea of understanding that we even have an elementary environment. So this is just a picture of an elementary environment for you to see kind of how it looks, and it does look a little different from your primary environments. So what is parent education? Parent education really is about making sure that parents are well informed and that they buy into the process of staying for elementary. If they don't understand what the elementary is about, if they don't understand what the Montessori curriculum is, chances are that they stay for various reasons, but they're not committed to it. And then they don't understand what their child is learning. That's the parent who has a lot of questions. They're constantly calling you up or calling up the school leader and saying, hey, you know what, my child is not learning anything. So we want to make sure, we want to start at the beginning, and we want to make sure that the parents understand what they're signing up for and what an exciting journey they're going to have with their child in the elementary program. And that's why we need it. We need to get them to make an informed choice. Just like we say in Montessori with children, we don't ask them to make any open choice. We ask them to make informed choices. Would you like the green towel or the pink towel? Just like that, we need to inform the parents of what it is that they're choosing. So what can we do about it? So we start by thinking of it in 3 major categories. We have some ways in which we invite them into our program. We have some ways to keep them informed about our program. And we have some ways to involve them in the program. And these 3 kind of broad categories let us know that parents all through the year are engaged in the elementary program or thinking about the elementary program from the beginning. Now, it's very important also to note that the elementary program, even though it starts from first grade, and a lot of times, yes, a lot of schools before the child is going into that first grade age, 6 years old, there will be a lot of events done just for that oldest child in the primary to show. But we actually need to start talking to parents about it right from the start, even infant toddler. It's not too early to bring an infant toddler parent into an elementary environment. And I can tell you from personal experience that I have had, gatherings where I've talked to parents. Infant children were barely 2 years old, and 5 years later, that child ended up in the elementary, because that's when we planted the seed in their mind that this is what the program is. And they just, over the 5 years, they just built that conviction to a point that not only did that child come into the elementary, she's currently in the middle school. So they literally stayed all the way from toddler. So it's really important that we do these kind of information and invitations to all parents as much as possible. The second important thing is that this is not a one-off, one and done kind of event. We want to keep peppering the whole year with little events that inform the parents and help them understand this. So what are these events that invite them in? The events that invite them in kind of show them what their child is going to experience in these coming years. It gives them sort of a glimpse of what's going to happen in the classrooms, and how a classroom works. Because you know that just walking through the class, walking past the classroom, doesn't really give you an idea of what the children do in the elementary, just like in the primary. You take a parent past the primary classroom and they see children sweeping, they think that's all children do all day and that's the only thing they're going to be doing in primary, which is not true. So we want to make sure that we invite them to see what's happening. So some of the ways that we can do it is, of course, like doing open houses and tours. And by tours, we talk about not just taking them through the environment, but to also talk to them about what's happening in the environment. So we constantly want to talk about what we call consultative enrollment. We want to make sure that as we are taking the families through on tours, that we are talking about what is the benefit of it, what is happening in the classroom. If you notice something interesting, to point it out to the parent. All of those are part of it. So let's talk about some of these events a little bit more in detail on how to set it up. And what is okay? So here are some of the events that we're talking about. Open house and tour, just like I said. It's usually led by a teacher or a curriculum director, somebody who can speak to the pedagogy, somebody who can speak Montessori. While school leaders tend to do it, and many school leaders are Montessori trained, which is great. There are schools in which the leaders are not Montessori trained and they don't feel as comfortable. And in those schools, it's better to have somebody like a teacher and sometimes even older students. No one's is more an advertisement for your school than your own students. So if you have those leadership quality, those children in upper elementary or middle school who have that leadership quality, invite them to walk around. They may not talk specifically about Montessori materials or specifically about the pedagogy, but the fact that they can take them around, they walk around confidently, introducing themselves, maybe asking your people who have come to the tour, handing them the brochures, asking them for their name, that in itself shows the parents and helps them start thinking about, oh, I want that for my child. This is what I want my child to look like when he or she is 10 years old or 12 years old. Look at the confidence. So we want them from the beginning to start seeing our students, if it's possible. Of course, it's not always possible. The other event is orientation. Now, this may include something like FAQs, like, for example, in your schools, you may have a certain policy. We don't have nuts, or we have certain kind of birthday routines. You don't do celebrations the way other schools in the community do it. All of those things get introduced during an orientation. That's kind of more like a webinar or lecture that we are doing now, where you would just introduce all of those aspects and say, this is the kind of curriculum, this is what happens, these are some important questions that everybody would like answers to. The other important event that invites them in, I used to call it Beyond Preschool, but it's usually an event that's led by a curriculum director or a senior teacher. And this is where we try to really visually show the parents how the primary and elementary are linked. Because when we show that link, that shows parents that not only are they happy about what has happened till here, every parent who goes through a primary program is so proud that their child can do golden bead addition because they've learned addition at 4 years old, or they have started reading and writing at 5. They're so proud of it. But it's nice to show them where it is leading, that kind of foundation that has been built, if you build on it, you take it a notch higher. And so having some kind of display of materials or showing some photo books or elementary work samples that you can show them, and giving them a talk about this overview of stages of development and say, this is what children do in language in the primary, this is how it builds up in the elementary, and if you have a middle school, you can always go on to talk to them about where it ends up in the middle school. So give them those unique features of your program, because some schools do overnight nature camps for 5 days or 10 days. Some do camping every year. Those are all unique things. Some do performances like operas or musicals at the end of the year. Let them know that these are all things that your child will be doing, that it's not just about the academics. It's going to be a wholesome growth for the child, just like it was in the primary. Because most often when parents have their children in a primary program, they see that holistic development. But very often, schools beyond the primary, which is first grade and onwards, don't take advantage of that holistic curriculum. They just kind of start focusing on purely academics, and that too in some streams of academics, not even all of the subjects. Then there's another event that is really eye-opening for parents, and we called it the glass classroom. And actually, the name comes from Dr. Montessori's own experiment she did in the San Francisco trade fair. This was I forget the year, I will let you know. But she actually had, at that trade fair, she had set up glass classroom. She set up in a public park in the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, in the park area, set up a glass rectangle, set it up like an environment in the middle, and the children just worked inside. There were thousands and thousands of people walking around, and what they saw was that the children really, and this was for 3 to 6 year olds by then at that point, but what it showed was that the children were not bothered when they're focusing, when they're concentrating. They really did. It didn't matter to them that around them there were so many things. Now, it may not be possible to do it like that, although I do know of one school that did it as recently as 2016, but that's a different story for another day. But what an adaptive version of it that we used to do was we had a guided walk within the classroom. So the children and I would prepare a guided walk starting from one classroom into the other. The fun part of it was the previous day, all of us going around with blue tape and putting arrows on the ground so that they could know where to go. And we created paths, and the parents were instructed they had to stay within the paths. But the paths kind of crossed through. It was almost like taking a hike through the forest. So the trees are there, the animals are there, everything is there, but you're taking a hike on that path. Same way, we created a path, and the children were told that, parents are going to be walking through from this time to this time. You just continue doing your work. And the only other instruction to them was, don't put any work on the path. Just keep it away from the path. And that was a beautiful way for parents to just walk into just an average, ordinary work day in the elementary. They got to see they got to see that the children, not all children got distracted. Elementary children also are pretty good at ignoring people if they want to, except their parents. And even that, they probably look up and just wave or say hi or something. But they don't get so distracted that they give up their work because they're used to that. And that's beautiful for parents to see, that when children are learning on their own, choosing on their own, that they're capable of that focus. Then observation, we all know observation is something that we all do, and it's wonderful to have parents come sit in for observations. It's particularly with primary parents, after you've done something like an orientation or an open house or a tour, or you've done that kind of event that's led by the curriculum director, you can offer to them to set up a time to come sit in the classrooms. Because of course we won't have more than 1 or 2 people in the classroom at the same time. That would have to be scheduled with the school, and they would come in, and that's when they get to see another side of the elementary classroom, which is, how does it look when I'm not walking through or disturbing it? I'm just sitting and watching. That's when they get to see the elementary children, maybe offer them tea, be the host and hostess, see all the grace and courtesy that they learned. The children bring them an observer's book and say, would you like to write something in our book as a visitor? Or would you like some tea? Which kind of tea would you like? Are you comfortable in your chair? Will you let me know when you need to leave? I can escort you to the office. Whatever it is, it gives them the opportunity to show all of those other skills which don't show up on tests and worksheets and pencils and papers, right? And finally, I cannot emphasize the importance of, if you have students who have passed out of your school or who keep in touch with you, or even if they've gone to another school, even if your school doesn't have a middle school or a high school. But in my experience, many children, even if they move to another school, they really love their Montessori classrooms. They really love their Montessori teachers because they realize that the relationship they have built with Montessori teachers is very different from what they build in a conventional school. So you can either have them come and speak, like it could be a panel of some ex-students and ex-parents who can actually answer questions for the new parents and new students, new families on some important questions like, oh, how did you, famous question for elementary students is, oh, how did you adjust to having exams and homework? And when the students answer it so confidently and say, yeah, you know what? When I started, it was a new thing for me. And I initially took a long time, long time to finish the homework, but I finished it. And what that shows the parents is how much responsibility the children learn to take on their own. They're not saying, I won't do it. They're not, parents don't have to run behind them and make them do it or bribe them to do it. They do it. It's just that they find their own balance of time, how much time it's going to take me to finish X amount of papers, and they figure it out. So having these kind of events helps parents to have all the kind of little glimpse into how the classroom runs, how the children learn. And all of these events, we always have question and answer times at the end so that parents can ask their questions, parents can, clarify their doubts if they want to. So here's an example of when I was saying something like what we would set up for progression of materials. Now, if you look at the constructive triangles on the left, a lot of times, constructive triangles is one of those materials that's magical because it looks so simple. When you see the primary presentation, it's very simple. It's putting triangles together and joining the black lines. And even for teachers, I can tell you, as a primary teacher, I did not give it as much respect as I should have given it until I became an elementary teacher and I realized, oh my goodness, the amount of work that it extends into equivalence, it extends into area, it extends into the Pythagorean theorem, which is exactly what you're seeing here, because you see the green right angle triangle and every triangle built on it on the side A, B, and C. And I'm not going to go through the theorem for you, but the same thing. Similarly, with practical life, to set up a display where you have those simple practical lives where parents ask, oh, what is my child doing just cutting lemons or polishing little wood pieces? But if you notice at the end of it, when they come to the elementary, the kind of intricate science work that they are able to do, the sequence of events, to be able to take a science experiment from start to finish is a big skill. And that's where it translates. So it's important to show parents that this is where it's going. So sandpaper letters that started at 3 now has become sentence analysis. There are things that they are learning in elementary, like how to do attributives and appositives, which parents have forgotten from their college days. They probably learned it in college, but they forgot it. But children are learning it in elementary. So it's important to show them how the curriculum is progressing. That whole idea we have of the spiral curriculum, that needs to come through. And that's visually, it comes through beautifully if you do that display. Here's another example of it with, of course, our famous binomial cube and trinomial cube. For those of you who are elementary trained, you'll realize in primary, children just put it together as a puzzle. And often we've been asked, why do you have the trinomial cube or the binomial cube in the primary? And the real answer is that actually they are meant to be teaching the children the algebraic, the theorem of a plus b plus c, the whole cubed. That translates. And it actually, if you see the right side picture, when you lay it out and when you put the tickets on what those are, the entire, if you were able to read it, you'd be able to read the whole equation that comes out of it. Now, are we going to tell that to the 3-year-old child who's putting it together as a puzzle? No. But what we are doing is we are helping that child visually. When that child has the sensorial capacity to absorb the trinomial theorem sensorially and through their hands, we let them absorb it. So that later on, the same trinomial cube can come back, and now we can give the properties of mathematics and algebra to it and give them the geometric aspect of it. So, as for the panel, this is even collecting something. So if you're not able to have students come back to you and speak at your event, sometimes if you have a relationship with them, which thankfully I had with some of my students, so they responded to me, I just said, what do you remember about it? They can send you little blurbs. They can even send you little video shots. These days, it's easy enough for them to send you something where you can say, oh, this is what I gained from it. And if you actually take the time to read through it, which I'm not going to give you because we are on a clock. But I'm just going to read this one student who said, my mathematical reasoning is incredible because I was given the freedom to spend hours to comprehend the power of infinity by counting out loud all day. And I remember the student who went on to study at Harvard, became a computer scientist, worked in Microsoft, now has his own startup, which he's making hopefully billions, which someday maybe he'll give me some of. I don't know. But anyway, but the fact is that I remember when he was first introduced to the millions, he immediately wanted to go, what comes after million, what comes after trillion, what comes up. And that's where he wanted to go. And he went as far as he could. How many zeros could he go up to? And that's the kind of interest that probably led him to do much of his work later. So children do realize, and Montessori, the other beauty of these blurbs that they send you is that Montessori children understand themselves so well because they have been given the opportunity to really understand what they like to do, what's my strength, what are some things I need to work on, what are some things that worked for me. And they're very articulate. All right, coming to now that we've talked about inviting parents in, let's talk about information, like more information on it, right? So these are events where we elaborate on how that whole level operates, or how children learn. Children show their work, help parents understand exactly how this trinomial cube comes about. It's not just a visual, it's not just somebody saying, this is what happens in the primary, this is what happens in the elementary, but they actually get to see it, either through what we call a student exhibition, where students are showing it, or where they hands-on explore it themselves, or there's some kind of parent-student event, or sometimes there's teacher presentation. So let's just go through that. So student exhibition is an event where elementary children choose a particular presentation, one or two presentations, and they literally practice it and they set up shop. It's not like in the primary where you have, I'm going to show my parent or I'm going to show my caregiver. It's, I'm so confident of this checkerboard, anybody can come and see it and I will explain it to you. And that's the confidence we want to see in the children. So they just share. We have a student exhibition night. They set up their stalls, which means whatever work they're showcasing. They practice within the classroom with their peers on answering some questions. And of course, there are going to be some questions that they don't know how to answer, and that they refer to their teacher and say, can you please ask my teacher? She will explain it to you. It's Your Turn is kind of a twist on an event that in Montessori circles is called the Silent Journey, but that's a very, very specific event, and we don't use that terminology unless it's done like the way the person who designed it has said it should be done. So in It's Your Turn, it's a parent-only event where the parents get to interact with the materials and work with the materials and learn how children learn. And I cannot tell you how powerful this is for parents, because when they see, imagine that constructive triangle, right? When they actually sit down there and they follow the instructions and they make that Pythagorean theorem out of the constructive triangles, that's not something you can unfeel or unlearn. That is something that stays in their mind. And most often after this event, parents go away saying, I wish I had learned it this way. I wish I had been in a Montessori school when I was younger. Also, it gives them more context. For example, parents, when children go home and say, parents ask them, oh, what did you do all week? And it's like, oh my God, I was working on a long division problem. All week? Yes. But when they come, I can tell you how many parents struggle with the racks and tubes to figure out how to do the racks and tubes and do the long division equation. And they have a sense of respect for their child who can do those long division equations so casually. It's like, oh yeah, you just take a blue bead and you exchange it for 10 green beads. It takes them a long time to understand that because they have not grown up through the primary with all the change game and the exchange and the all of the place value work they've done. So they get their hands on it. And usually we have written instructions for them, and we also have teachers there to help them if they need it. So it's not really like a teacher, everything is presented to the people. There are cards that have the step-by-step instructions. They try to figure it out. If they need help, one of the teachers steps in and shows them how. And then there are parent-student events where the students create something. Sometimes it's been a lunch event where the students make all the lunch for the parents. They set up the tables. They host them like waiters. They make menu cards and they ask them which one would you like, and they serve them. Again, showing them so many different aspects of their learning besides just the ABCDs and 1, 2, 3, 4s. Then you could do teacher presentations because we know as Montessori teachers, especially if you have a primary teacher and an elementary teacher who team up, just showing them how language progresses from that first time they come into the primary environment and they're just doing songs and they're doing vocabulary. They're going around naming things in the classroom. They're slowly naming things in a basket. They're moving on to doing classified pictures, just vocabulary, things in a house, things in a railway station. Then moving on to movable alphabet, moving on to writing, moving on to metal insect, just showing them the whole sequence of how it comes together and to kind of show them at the end, towards the end, what the children are able to produce with that kind of instruction. Poetry, children are writing research papers with 14, 15 pages of research on some topic that they're interested in. Creative stories, persuasive letters, they're doing so much more. So it's nice for the as a teacher presentation because there you can explain what's happening there. And of course, just helping parents get in touch with the pedagogy itself. No one can ever say it better than Dr. Montessori can. So sometimes we just need to bring the big guns to the party and we just need to start say, hey, let's read this passage together and let's discuss it. And I think one of the things that has happened of late, which is one of the things of technology, we've all got so comfortable to doing this, which is getting together on a screen, that it becomes even easier to schedule some of these things. So yes, while you cannot do an It's Your Turn or a student exhibition online, a teacher presentation could very easily be done online with the right camera placements. A parent book discussion can very easily be done online by saying, hey, I'm going to meet, this is the passage we're going to read about Dr. Montessori, what she said about choice and freedom and independence and responsibility, and let's discuss it. And there might be some parents. And I think the more parents engage in it with you and they realize the passion that we have for Montessori, which we have, because if we didn't have it, none of us would be here. They realize that their child is getting something that not every child is getting out there, unfortunately. So here's an example of the student exhibitions where the students lay out the materials or explain something to somebody. Just imagine this parent on the right who's seeing the explanation of turning a 5 cube into a 9 cube, the steps. And I don't know if you can see the height and size of the child, but he was all of about less than 4 feet, and he was about 8, I want to say. And he is explaining to these, and these are not his parents, these are somebody else's parents who are coming there for the exhibition. And look at the intent way they are listening to him explain how he turned this 5 cube into a 9 cube and then dismantled it to show the equation of how do you go from a 5 cube to a 9 cube? What's the formula? This is then some examples of parents experiencing the work, actually seeing the work laid out. And I always make sure that at these exhibitions, I always put the racks and tubes out because I love to see the parents get tortured when they take out the racks and tubes. And elementary children will often come and ask and say, "What did my mom and dad do when they came for the exhibition?" And I say racks and tubes, and they struggled with it, and we all have a good laugh on it. I shouldn't tell you this because I know some of your parents and you probably have children in Montessori schools, but the children get very excited because to them this is so easy because they've been doing it for so long. They're so used to it that they find it funny that an adult who they think knows everything found it really hard to figure out how to exchange that one bead of blue for 10 beads of green. But with these kind of events where they see these layouts, where they actually work with the material, I mean, if you look at the right side where we've talked about percentage, how many people have learned percentage like that? What is a percentage? It's pretty much just what 100 gets. That's it. That's the simple explanation for percentage. Has anyone ever told you that in school when you were growing up? No. They made it become this huge thing. Oh, we have to put this, we have to divide it by this, multiply it by this, we have to put, do all this. If they had just said to you, it's just what 100 gets, and now you want to figure out what the 1,000 gets, you just multiply it. You want to find out how much a 10 gets, you divide it. So seeing these things, experiencing, working with these things, working with the materials, they really feel more connected to what their child is learning. And that's what we want to do because we want them to know this is how deep your child's learning is of the concept. The other thing that we could do is kind of share pictures. And I know that these days it's with a lot of parents and with online portals and things like that, there's a big push for sharing what the child is doing every day in school or, sharing pictures of what they're doing. And typically in Montessori, we don't want to do that. We usually don't. We don't give frequent updates. And the reason for that is hopefully, if we are really allowing the children to have that choice and freedom, no two children's daily work is identical in any way. They might all do a song together sometime during the day, or they might eat lunch together. But pretty much everything else the children do is different. One child did the racks and tubes, the other one did the large bead frame, the third one weighed things on the weighing scale, the fourth one went around and collected leaves, the fifth one went and did some art. So there's no way to say like how conventionally parents get notes saying, this week our children worked on. No, we cannot send that. But what we can do is, because we know that that's the era we are living in and parents do want to know, we could make it a little bit Montessori-like. I like to call it Montessorized. Anything can be taken and Montessorized, which means we look at it through the Montessori lens and say, how can I adapt this so that it doesn't affect my practice of Montessori, but it also satisfied the parents' need for communication. We could take a few panoramic pictures of the classroom and post it instead of taking each child's picture because we don't want them to get into that whole idea of product is more important than process. We could do it by sending it maybe just weekly, like a blurb, like a little newsletter, which maybe even the children in elementary children can help you put that together. We could do it by having little on your notice boards outside to have little pictures of the work they've done and a little blurb there that says what the child was talking about or what the child was doing. So to give you an example, when the child was doing the geometric cards with the geometric insets, there's going to be no evidence left of it after that child has done it and put it back, because the cards are there, the insets are there, he matches it, he puts it away. But what he said when he was doing it was, oh, I can make a trapezoid by cutting off some parts of the triangle or of the rectangle. Now, that's what's important, because now this child has made the connection between the trapezoid, the rectangle, and that's where, as a teacher, we are able to say, oh, well, maybe you should try it. Why don't you cut a paper rectangle and see if you can turn it into a trapezoid? But that's something the parent is never going to see on a worksheet even if the child does one. So maybe we can take pictures, maybe we can put little blurbs on how to share this. The third also critical part is involving parents. And this is a huge one, because one, parents do want to be involved in the school. They do want to be part of it. They do want to come inside. And many parents always keep asking you, what can I do? Can I come and help you in the classroom one day? And we really don't want the parents coming and doing a lesson on the large bead frame, because they don't know how. We don't even let a non-Montessori person give that lesson. So, but what can they do? Can we involve them in some way where they feel, not only did they feel that they're contributing to this, but they also feel and appreciate what the children are learning. So we could have them doing volunteering work with us, which means when the children need something for the classroom, or the children have a um, garden outside, maybe a parent could volunteer to come once a week and help them in the garden, because that parent isn't interested in gardening. Or they could drive them to the grocery store to go and get the baking soda and vinegar that you ran out of because everybody exploded the volcano in 1 week. We don't know what it is. They could chaperone for extended learning. So if the children are going on field trips or going out, so camping, they can chaperone the children. They see how responsible these children are. I remember a parent of a 6-year-old who came with me for the first time on a camping trip. And at the end of those 3 days, he said, I don't believe what I just saw. I did not. And his child, when he was even when we were 6 years old, came into the elementary crying every day, not letting his dad go. That was the child. He was so emotionally, he was having separation anxiety even at 6. And this child, when he came for the camping, set up the tent with his friends. He was on the breakfast making committee. He helped people clean up after dinner. Dad could not believe it, just could not believe it, that he could do it. And he couldn't believe what the other children could do. When they participate in large events or fundraisers, because elementary children love to raise funds for all kinds of things. They love to make little magnets and bead bracelets and keychains and sell it, and then make money to either give away to, there's an earthquake in Haiti, they want to collect money for Haiti. If there's a fire in Australia, they want to send something to Australia for the animal rescue. Or they want to buy a classroom pet, or they want to buy something special to put inside the fish tank so the fish can swim through it. It could be anything, but the children they're very industrious. They want to do things themselves and they want to be involved in their environment. And when parents see that, there's a lot of learning for the parents on how the children manage and navigate these. So when they're volunteering, if you can look at this picture on the left, this is at a camp, and you can see the whole assembly line of people cleaning up. This was every day, one group was in charge of cleaning up after everybody ate at the camp. This was one group, but just look at that concentration and that organization. This is where all that primary work is going. All of that dishwashing, all of that table washing, all of those little pouring activities they did in 3 to 6 have now resulted in a child who's able to commit to doing a sequence of work like this. When they volunteer and take the children out for field trips, the kind of questions they ask. So this Discovery Museum, children asking questions about sound waves and light, and how does this happen? Why is this heavier? Why is this falling instead of floating? When parents hear those questions, and when even the people in that museum hear those questions, we've always hear back from them saying, we've never had a group of children who are so curious and so interested in the answer. So if they're not asking why and what and not listening to the answer, they're actually standing there and listening, sometimes even taking notes. That's how interested they are in learning. So it's important for parents to see them in that. When they see them volunteering, when they see them go into the community and help seniors learn origami, because it's good for the senior citizens to learn something with their hands, the parents see how compassionate the children can be. Here's a picture of them. This was some fundraiser for, of course, they were selling chocolates. But look at the whole marketing strategy. There's a board. That board has all the advertising on it. It has the pictures. It has the, what they're selling, how much they're selling for. They have a catalog. They have an order form. It's the whole. This is like a mini business. Yes, they're not doing it out on the streets or in a shopping mall, but they are getting ready for that. And those are some major skills. A lot of times we hear schools nowadays it's very new to say, oh, we are teaching children life skills. Montessori all begins and ends with life skills. That's all we are teaching children. And by the way, when we are teaching them life skills, they happen to learn some of the academic things that they need to learn. But that's all we are into. We are into preparing them for life. That is our bottom line, right? Material making is another way parents can participate. So when they're like, what can I do for you? Like, okay, you can help me make materials, because especially in elementary, there are simple things that any adult can do for you. I had a parent, if you've heard of the punctuation cards, I said, oh, I just had to give her the, brief and say, just find 4 or 5 passages from books that are interesting to children and put it on a little 10 by 10 card, remove all the punctuation marks. That's all I want you to do. And my assistant will cut it and paste it into the format I want it. That was great for her because she had great fun with her daughter finding little passages, from one from Nancy Drew and one from Harry Potter and one from a book about cactus and one from something else, and putting them together, removing all the punctuation marks, and having it presented as something that children could take off the shelf and do themselves, add the punctuation marks, and have a control of error. So they could find materials, they could help in collecting materials for the classroom. They could be classroom resource people, because if there are other volunteers, they can organize events, or they can be the person who brings fresh produce for the food prep activities, or for the flower arranging, or for the garden, or for the composting. So there's many ways in which we can purposefully engage the parents who want to be engaged in the community without it really interfering with our classroom, which is what we don't want. So when they volunteer and chaperone, they really see how the children engage with the community. They really see how children can create, prepare, rehearse, perform, put so many skills into maybe a performance. They make their own costumes, they make their own sets. These are not skills that children are getting in a classroom where they're sitting behind a desk and listening to a teacher lecture. And outdoor activities, they see their children, they see their physical growth, they see how their balance is growing, their coordination is growing, and their team skills. Cooperative team skills are so important. Watching children create their own game, create their own rules for the game, explaining those rules, enforcing those rules, it's a beautiful process to see. And we enjoy it. Why not the parents enjoy it? That's something they could come and enjoy. They could come and teach them, watch them, or show them how to play basketball, for example, or the simple rules. All of this is about parents, and I know that that's kind of what we wanted to talk about, but I don't want to stop with parents. I want to say that one of the most important things you're going to have to do in your schools if you want to retain parents and if you want parents to even come to these events, because that's the biggest thing. Oh, I can have the most beautiful events, I can have all of the events. And of course, I'm not asking you to have all the events in 1 year because nobody will come to it. But you can have the best of events. You're going to have parents not showing up. Why? Because there's another critical member in your school who needs to endorse your elementary program, and that's your primary teacher. A lot of times, elementary classrooms feel like, yes, we are doing such wonderful things, parents should just see it. But you know what? That primary guide who nurtured this child from 2 to 6, who the parents trusted this precious 2-year-old to, that's somebody, if they endorse your elementary program, that goes a long way in a parent's mind. Every primary teacher will tell you that when the parents are deciding, when the child is getting to be about 5.5 or 6, parents have conversations with the primary teachers. They'll be like, oh, what do you think, Miss Catherine? Do you think I should keep John in this school? Or do you think I should send him to my neighbor's school because that child is learning multiplication and is bringing home worksheets? And at that point, Catherine can say two things. Catherine can say, oh, you know what? John is so well prepared that he would do well in any school. Or Catherine can say, you know what? John has been doing so well and he's learned so much. He's built such a wonderful foundation. I really wish you would go and check out our elementary. Will you go and talk to Priya and find out what they do? Because I really think he will thrive in our elementary program. And that one sentence from Catherine, who is the teacher who looked after my child from 2 to 6, makes a huge difference. At least for her sake, I will go check out these events, if not for anything else, because I have now built a relationship with her. But if she has said to me, oh, he's ready to go to any school, she's pretty much giving me permission to take him anywhere. So she's not endorsing. So I cannot stress enough how important this is for enrollment in elementary. And time and again, I have seen a lot of elementary programs suffer because they do not keep that relationship between the staff of primary and elementary. So one of the things you can do for that is start having combined meetings between teachers of all levels. Even if it's once a month, once in 2 months, bring them together to have some pedagogical discussions. Let them come around the table and let's all share about what is my understanding of freedom and responsibility, or what do we do with the trinomial cube in the primary and what do we do in the elementary. Let's just have discussions about Montessori, which is our passion subject for all of us as Montessori teachers. That breaks the ice. Let students visit presentations between the levels. So let there be a community between the primary and the elementary students, where maybe the elementary students either come and volunteer in the primary, come and read a book once in a while, volunteer in your classroom to come and show them some artwork, or come and show their presentations. I've just done this beautiful research on frogs. I have a beautiful board that has pictures of frogs. Let me show it off to this 4-year-old who's looking at me in awe and wants to be like me. Those are the heroes they're going to be looking up to, not the teachers. So let them have more time. Have more time for staff to socialize, to be able to interact with each other even casually. Because even something as simple as, oh, let me go and borrow, I ran out of red paper, let me go borrow it from Miss Catherine's classroom. I know she has it. Tells the children of both classrooms that Catherine and I are on cordial terms and that I can go and borrow things from her and she might come and borrow things, or they might see her stop by my classroom and just say, hi, how are you? Do you want some coffee? Those things make a difference. Children see you interacting, children interact with that teacher as well. That fear of, oh, I have to now go to an elementary classroom to a new teacher, the scary teacher Priya with her glasses, goes away because now Priya has become Catherine's friend. So they're like, oh, Miss Priya, I'm coming to your classroom. We want to develop that. So that can only happen if the teachers are able to interact with each other. Give them more opportunities for combined professional development. Invite them to all of the events. All of those events you have for parents, invite your primary teachers. They don't all have to come to everything. But if a parent sees their primary guide of their child at even one of those events, that's a visual endorsement. That makes them feel good. That makes them feel like, oh, you know what? This teacher also believes in what the elementary program is about. So start inviting them to things. And, of course, that's a logistical thing that you have to figure out. But finally, for parents, periodic communication. Now, here's again coming back to that whole idea of we are not going to send them daily pictures or daily news of today your child worked on racks and tubes. We're not doing that. But online communication has become very important these days. So find a way to do that, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's you use Transparent Classroom or any other portal like that. Decide on your timeline, do it, do the photographs. One of the things that worked really well for me was every week I set aside time during my planning time. So end of the day used to be planning, 3 to 3:30 or 3:30 to 3 to 4. I would set aside 3 to 4 once a week and call it my office hours. What that meant was any parent who wanted to schedule and come and meet me could schedule and come and meet me. They couldn't just drop in. They had to schedule it because I didn't want to meet 5 parents at the same time. But just even offering that sometimes made the parents feel comfortable that, oh, if we have a question with the teacher, I don't have to wait for those scheduled conferences, which are only twice a year. And I don't have to run behind her in the parking lot and stop her at the day when she's rushing home. I can go on a Wednesday afternoon and I can meet and I can ask all my questions. The other thing we can do is have some parent education resources. Sometimes you can have framed pictures of something that's happening and that speaks about the elementary age so that they understand it. So in the hallways, you could have a little picture. This picture shows you a really messy checkerboard, which has been extended to billions or trillions or something like that. But this is showing you exactly what the elementary child is like. For them, inner order is more priority, outer order is not. They will take multiple boxes of bead bars, multiple checkerboards, multiple materials to make what they want to make to get the answer that they want to get. So they need to see that instead of looking at it as, oh my God, my child used to be so careful and he used to be so orderly when he was with Miss Catherine, and he came to Miss Priya's classroom and now everything is a mess. Kind of implying that Priya probably made him messy. Having things like books and articles, having little trifold brochures, like even when you do tours, one thing I have learned is that when parents do hear everything that you have said, like right now, I have talked so much out of all the talking I did for 1 hour, maybe 10 minutes of it you're going to remember, right? But if I gave you, after this talk of 1 hour, if I gave you whatever I talked about, if I gave you a brochure that had all the points in it, chances of you remembering more of it. Chances of you going home later and saying, you know what? I remember Priya said something that was interesting. Let me open this brochure and see if that point is in here. Photo books, having photo books in your lobby where they're sitting and waiting for your appointment or something when they've come to pick up their child, having photo books that show school events or showcase your yearbook or something like that. Having handouts like they can take, like famous Montessori graduates, or you have FAQs that you've put together. Even some parent and student testimonials, like I showed you, could be made into a little trifold that they can take with them, which they can look at. Social media is now a big thing. So updating websites, updating your Facebook or LinkedIn or social media pages without obviously showing children's pictures, but showing what you're talking about, what you're doing. I know one school, elementary school in Florida, does this beautifully. Every week, they showcase one material or one activity. And obviously, we have more than 365, more than 56 activities to showcase every week. So we are fine. But then she writes a little blurb about it and says, this is what is happening. This is what the metal inset does. And this is the purpose of it. With that, I will just come back to what we were talking about and say the real purpose of education is to prepare the orientation for future generations who will progress to a new plane. And maybe we'll talk about that new plane another time. I will leave you with, if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. And I would love to know what are some of the other topics that you would like to discuss in the future with these webinars that hopefully Catherine and I will have more of. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Priya. Do we have any questions? If you want, do you have questions? You can either just unmute yourself. Somebody just came in. We are finishing.
I have a question, Priya.
I may have an answer.
Now you're talking about social media, okay? I know some school, you know, at least the school that I used to work with, they will actually have, you know, maybe a non-Montessori teacher coming in, maybe the IT guys coming in, maybe a parent who volunteer coming into my classroom and taking pictures of my children working. And then they will actually spin the tale about what the children are doing without, you know, consulting with us. Maybe talk to the principal or something like that. But, you know, what would you say to this kind of approach to, you know, posting? Because sometimes it looks really nice in pictures or video, but they miss the whole point of the philosophy, you know.
Yeah.
So how do we talk about that?
And that's something that you need to talk about with your administration, with whoever is arranging, because you don't even want somebody flying into your classroom when your classroom is in session and disturbing it, right? Ideally, you're the one taking the picture, or somebody in your classroom, or a trusted parent is coming for observation. And as they are sitting, they're discreetly taking pictures. They're not going around with, zoom lenses all over the classroom, right? That would be the ideal situation. You take the pictures or they take the pictures, and then at the end of the picture taking, you get together with the classroom teacher, who is the one who can speak to that picture, because you are the one what the child was saying, what was happening at that time, or what you would like to say. Or if you have somebody in the school who is very well versed in Montessori, and they will be able to make sense of the picture for you, like your school leader or your curriculum coordinator or something, they could give the blurb. But especially in Montessori, I would not let marketing person who does not know Montessori. Hey, there might be some marketing people out there who are Montessori children, and they were more Montessori than you and me, Sure, if they want to write it up, fine. But in my experience, most of the marketing companies or ad companies that get recruited to do this these days just go to AI and ask it, what can I say about this picture? And AI tells them, and AI is not always right. So you have to check. And they say it themselves. At the bottom, they'll always say, please check the work. There might be mistakes. So I think it's ideal if you can set up a system where those pictures are taken by somebody who knows what pictures to take, who's not making children pose with the material, who's actually taking the right kind of shots, and then discusses with somebody who knows what was happening in that picture, rather than to just make up things.
Thank you.
I have a question, ma'am.
Mm.
Ma'am, you said that we need to have regular meetings with the parents. It is okay for the Western parents. How about the Indian parents who doesn't want to come often, and they feel that's a burden for them, and like they wouldn't want to care about the child after leaving the child in the school? How to go about it?
So one is ideally, obviously, when you say meeting parents, are you talking about coming to the events, or are you talking about just coming for meetings?
For the events.
But for the events, yeah. So, and elementary, actually, this is easier than primary. But what we did, some schools, and they are able to do it, some schools are able to, right at the beginning, when the child is enrolled, they are able to say that you need to commit literally to the parents in their admission forms to say, you need to commit to attending at least one event, school event, in person every term, or something like that, or at least one event, two events all through the year. One could be online, one could be in person, something like that. One is you can set up that expectation. Second is in elementary, I have found anytime children are more excited about the event and children are involved in it in some way, even if they are not at the event, if they are involved in it in some way, they will push their parents to come to the event. So, for example, for this, it's your turn, where the children are not there. Where the student exhibition, they will make sure that their parents come because parents want to come and see them working because the children have already gone home and said, oh, I want you to come and see how I'm showing everybody how to do the checkerboard. But if they are not coming for this event where it's only a parent event, but if the children have helped you set up the classroom, if the children have made cookies that evening that you're going to serve in the classroom for parents, I had one year children make journals for their parents, like small journals, and say, hey, take this home, give this to your parents, and tell them when they come, just like you do journals for yourself in the classroom, that when they come this evening and work, they have to write down all the work they did and come and share it with you. Do you think any parent was able to talk their 7-year-old out of that question? No. There was probably, they were pushed out of the house probably and put in the car and said, go, you have to go. I want to know what you worked on. So we have to find ways of engaging the child in some way in it so that the child is the one who's, like I said to you before, child is your best ad campaign. So child is the one who's driving that a lot. The other thing that we used to do, which is we used to have a list, one running list of all the events that we had scheduled during the year, right? And we had all the children's names. And they had to just sign in. When they came in, they signed in. That sheet was available. So you as a parent came in, let's say you came in for one event in August. The other parent, Catherine's not come for any event. Then you've come for another event. Catherine hasn't come. And, she comes sometime in March for an event. She sees all these empty boxes in front of her name. I know, we're not supposed to blame and shame and everything, but that's with the children. But we're not saying anything. We're just showing them that, hey, you have not been attending, right? But that said, apart from that, I would say nowadays it becomes very easy because we have this online platform to offer things online. Even parent conferences, they don't always have to be, it's so much easier if you can have, if somebody's not able to come and not able to schedule within those 2 days, give them an option to do an online conference with you. So come for that event. Maybe you can set up a video camera in the corner and they can see this presentation of going on. Maybe they won't understand it as well as if they had come, but at least they feel like they participated in some way, and maybe they'll come for the next one. So we have to try different ways to get parents to kind of engage with all of these. But I would say my first go-to is to get children to do something about it. I made cupcakes for you when you go today to my classroom. When you're listening to Miss Priya talk about the math materials, do you see, look for the cupcake that has 3 red strawberries on it. That's the one I made. Yeah, that's a selling point.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Right. So thank you so much,
Yeah,
Priya, for your wonderful sharing. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly, let me just stop the recording. Hold on, it's not stopping.